Right. Who's that? It's Rodrigo.
Hi guys,
All right, it's
how you
Friday.
doing?
Happy Friday, everyone. It is Free Hands Friday number 77, and Gene here, and we have so many people with us today. Wow, we're going to have a lot of fun, and we're like all over the place, right? So, Victor, you're just to the left of me. Why don't you start? How's things going? Like, give us like the 2 minute rundown of what's going on.
The 2 minute rundown. Well, I'm probably I'm the least interesting man in the world, I think. But I guess in the last few months, my stick adventures have taken a slight turn. The band that I spent most of my time working with is on possible permanent hiatus because someone got a job in another city. So I've been working on solo stuff lately, and it reminds me of how slow solo tunes come to me. So I've been, working on a couple things. Working on Minuet in G minor to go with Minuet in G major, and then.
You
And
nailed
then,
the first one.
What's that?
You nailed the first one.
Yeah, well, thank you, appreciate that. And then another couple other tunes. Steve Adelson, he started me out on "Everybody Wants to Rule the World," and so he said, "Oh yeah, you could learn this song in 2 or 4 hours, and you could be ready to play it tonight if you had to."
Wow.
Yeah, what a crock.
Yeah.
But anyhow, it's a good song to work on for rhythmic exercise because it's in 6/8 and it's in a shuffle. And trying to maintain a shuffle with the left hand while doing stuff with your right hand, that's apparently something that throws me for a loop. So that's been actually a really, really good song to work on. So, and beyond that, I guess the only thing that's new that I'm going to scream from the rooftops is get a tag interface. That has done wonders for my back, and it's nice to be able to put in long hours of practice without having to worry about my back. Plus, you can walk right up to your stick while you're wearing sweatpants and not have to put on a belt and play, and it's nice to be able to just walk up and start playing without having to lift it up off the stand or off the wall, put it on. I know it only saves 30 seconds, but still, there's something about it that's just. So anyway, get a tag interface. There's my plug, and that's probably beyond my 2 minutes.
Well, thank you for that. And let me just say something really quick on that. I will definitely tell John that you said that because he takes a lot of pride in his work, and he really wants to improve it. So he really wants to get one of the buckles, and I said I was going to do it for him. Guess what? I haven't done it yet. I want to get one.
So
of the buckles.
actually, one thing that I've given a little bit of thought to is I'm entertaining ideas of trying to find to design a stiffener to put on the belt hook, because the stick wobbles quite a bit, and you get used to it and it's fine, but it wobbles at the belt hook, and if it looks like there's probably possibilities to slip a stiffener in there if you were so inclined and had one that would possibly reduce the amount of shaking around on that. So, but man, I love my tag interface. So man, it's so awesome. There we go. Okay.
Thanks for that. You know what? Another thing that people talked about was filing down one of the sides of the cymbal stand, so that if this is like the cymbal stand and the tag fits on top of it, you
oh yeah.
So it was flat. So that was one thing that we were also working on. Anyway.
Yeah, I haven't really had an issue with that. I mean, you can move it on mine, but it hasn't bothered me a whole lot. So I mean, I guess everyone's got their own situation and how they're applying it and stuff like that, and how they play it and whatnot. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, pass it along. So there we go. I'm gonna mute my microphone now and mute my camera so I can finish eating my dinner.
All right.
While I listen.
Let's do Tomas next. I know that Tomas had some gigs coming up, and let's keep it busy. So Tomas, why don't you give us the rundown?
Yeah.
What have you been working on?
I was working in a mix. I have two friends. They are guitar players, classical guitar players. They started a tour for Europe last Wednesday. They wanted to have a little promotional material. EP is the same word there. Um, and I mixed the little album. Um, 2 days, man, 2 days working until 4 a.m. and then waking up at 8 a.m. again, doing my stuff, my job, all that stuff. And then my friend said to me, "Man, you have a promotional material. You have your own EP, your own album. We can carry your album to Europe."
Wow, that's
Oh
fantastic.
man, I don't have really. You must to do it now.
Hmm.
So in 2 days, I make my own promotional material, my own EP with 3 songs, just 10 physical copies.
Uh-huh.
Now that physical copies are in somewhere in Europe, I think.
Hmm. Well, that's great. That's good.
Yes,
Like a little promotion. Will any of them make it out to Poland where you were last year or this year?
yes, yes. Maybe on December.
Okay.
I'm. I have almost all ready for that trip.
Is this something that we can buy or download?
Sorry.
Is there someplace we can buy it or download it?
Yes,
Okay. Okay.
that's my story.
Okay, but we'll want to know, right? You'll tell us where we can buy it, maybe post it on Facebook or stick us or something, right?
Yes,
Get the 3 song EP.
yes. Just 3 songs.
Cool.
That is.
Cool. Cool. Right on. Well, good to hear. I'm looking forward to hearing those 3 songs.
Uh, I have a legal trouble here in Chile because one of that songs is in mm, a kind of let me
It's like a
use
publishing.
this word, a kind of championship of songs is I don't know the word, but one of the rules on this championship
Okay.
is my song can't be published or shared or in an album.
That's
So I can release the EP in Chile.
I see.
It's impossible to me until I know the results of the championship. I don't know the word.
Yeah, it's
Let
a
me.
contest, right?
Uh-huh.
Contest. Yeah. Cool. Well, congratulations. That sounds great.
Oh,
And
lot of money. Lot of money.
as soon as we're able to get a copy of it, I'd love to get a copy of it.
Yeah.
Cool. Steve, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Good. I had to go grab a microphone. It looks like my computer mic doesn't work. Last month, I've been pretty much doing a lot of gear upgrades and equipment. I've got new studio monitors, extra PA here. We'll probably talk about that a little later. Other than that, about a month ago, I was playing guitar with Steve Osborne for a benefit concert. He has that special needs band. Actually, he has 2 of them, I guess. Now it's really expanded for him. So they had a concert in a really nice theater,
Yeah.
and that was a lot of fun. We played a couple of songs there, and it was fun to get out and play live on a stage. It was really nice.
Hey, for those of us who don't know about your scene in Michigan, tell us a little bit about that. Like, tell us about, just give us like a 2 or 3 minute thing, because I mean, I went up there one time and it just blew me away. Like, it was like, well, how long has this been going on? You know, like,
Let me tell you the I just got the whole story of this myself. I thought I knew it, but I didn't realize it. But Steve Osborne got into the stick from another guy who's a professional banjo player. All these guys, a lot of these music store owners around here, they used to work for a couple of shops in Ann Arbor, and then they branched out over the years into their own stores. And then Steve, got influenced by this banjo player to take up the stick. And ever since then, he has made a name for himself in Ann Arbor, in this whole area. I mean, I have friends who are not musicians. People know what a Chapman stick is around here. It's surprising. I have a friend who actually hired Steve to play at his wedding a good many years ago.
Really?
So it's not an obscure instrument as you'd think. I mean, even I had an HR manager at work that actually saw Bob Culbertson play at Hart Plaza. I'm like, just floored. It's like, it's not as obscure as everybody else has in the other world. So now we're gaining more people coming to these monthly gatherings at a store every month, like on one Thursday, or now it's a Friday. Once a month, we have a stick gathering. And I think we got like anywhere from about 12 people now that any combination that will show up, so some days we might get a few and other days we might get a dozen.
Right.
But it's growing.
That's cool. I had a really great time when I was out there. Like you and Glenn, just like he just put on such a great event, and I'm glad to see that Interlocken's like doing so well. And
the funny thing about Glenn Porman, I saw his posting on stick.com a few years back, and I emailed him. I said, "What's this with Allen Park?" And it turns out Glenn went to my high school. He graduated before I started. We're about 4 years apart. And it's just a weird coincidence that we came from the same neighborhood.
Yeah, that is wild. It's a small world. It's a smaller Michigan world. Cool. Well, glad to hear things are going well. Let's see who's I think Dan Chapman's joined us, but I think Rob G, you were next. Yeah? Hey? How are we doing?
Hey, how are you? Everybody can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
So what's new with me? I built myself a couple things for my stick. So one of them being a pedal board. I didn't want to have to pay $200 for a pedal train pedal board, so I built one for 14 bucks.
Nice.
It looks the same. I'll
Oh yeah, give us the lowdown.
if you
Oh, I like it already. Oh, dude.
so if you can kind of see it, I put some handles on the side there.
Okay. Wow. Now,
And then
can we see the right side of the board? I can't see the right side.
sorry, I'm trying to hold this stupid thing upside down. Hold on. What's on the right side there?
There we go. Okay. Cool. Yeah, that's great. What is that pedal in the middle? Those two little pedals, the blue one, the green one. Okay, that's it.
The blue and green's TC electronic flashback in a chorus pedal.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dunlop came up with a Mini X volume pedal, so I got one of those.
Cool.
I've got my MIDI controller. You guys are talking about those.
Yeah, I like it.
So it's my soft step MIDI controller, and then this pedal, I built it myself. It's a splitter, so it takes the melody side and the bass side and splits it and sends it off to whichever pedal I want to use.
Wow.
So if I want to use the Blue Sky or the Big Sky on just the melody side, but not on the bass side, I can split it instead of have it. So otherwise, I'd have to unplug it out of each pedal. So I figured out the math. There's probably about 256 different ways of configuring it with different colors. And
Wow.
I put the color LEDs in there, so red was the bass and blue's melody. So anyway, it works great.
That's bad. Because they're stereo pedals. Clever.
They're stereo pedals. I wanted to save some money, but the problem is when I first got it, I could either use both sides or no sides. I couldn't use one unless I had to unplug it.
So,
anyway,
Rob, how much does one of those cost? Like if somebody wanted to buy it?
100. No, I built it for. I got it for about $100 in parts.
Really?
And then I went online and found a schematic for the wiring of it. So I just wired it up, but I modified it a bit to suit my needs because normally it's for one channel, not two.
Pretty
anyway.
cool, man.
Yeah, and I'm also about to post a video, Fragile, the Sting video. The Sting tune, I mean.
Oh, okay. I've been working on that.
Yeah, I should be posted in a couple days.
Right on.
That's it.
Right on. Well, sounds good. Boaz, sir?
Yeah.
I owe you an apology, sir. I've been.
Yes.
Here's my thing, though. Here's my thing. And I'll say this in front of everyone. I'm not ashamed to say it. Like, I'm gifting Boaz the tag. It's just like I've made the guy wait forever. I'm just gonna send you one of the Western Maple new ones, man. It's gonna be rad. You're gonna love it. You're gonna love it. I have to do it through the post office, and so I have to do it like tomorrow before noon. So you have my word, and we have witnesses here that I will do that. So now that all aside, me like sucking up and making everyone great. What's going on in your life, man?
Well, lately I was checking out Heartstrings. Those who know them, it's a Chapman Stick Duo by what's his name? Matt Rogers, Matt White.
Yeah, that's so good.
And when I was listening to them, they were saying to me, you just play so beautifully and simple chords, so I can play. Actually, it tells me I can play anything. So I'm trying lately some Beatles song, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and what else? Norwegian Wood.
Mm-hmm.
It tells me all this hand independence.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I was checking out some new stuff. And also in the effects department, how do I just?
So did you get an SY300?
Yeah. Oh, I need to ask you some question about the SY. Do you have leakage from the bass to the melody side? 'Cause when I put my melody side on the SY, I usually get on the two lowest bass string also a leakage, so they also get a bit of synth sound.
Oh yeah, I think it's just. Are you using an active 2 or a stick up?
Yeah, the stick up.
Which were you using? A stick
Stick
up?
up. Yeah.
I think. I mean, Emmett would know, really, right? But I mean, I think it's probably just the stick up is just giving it's just picking it up. You know, it's like getting those. I mean, it's a humbucker, right? So it's just like a Les Paul. Hot, you know, like it's like red hot. So you might get. I mean, maybe has anyone else experienced that? Like, I mean, I sometimes get a little bit of the bass side into the melody, those lower strings.
Right. So it's not a problem particular to me.
By design. I've had developers tell me that. They're like, "Ooh, what's that?"
Okay, some news on the effects department. You know I'm crazy.
Yeah, you are.
By the way, that's the reason I'm getting the Pacific Standard Time always wrong. You see this?
Yeah.
It's 5:30. No. Currently, oh, it's 6:30. Yeah.
It's actually 6:30. That's right.
Yeah. Even the standard time is not standard.
Dude, that's
so. Highly recommended the big body on the
really cool.
Like playing with a real drummer. And the compressor, the hypergravity TC Electronics compressor, the latest edition.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not sure if you can see this here, the more slow engine. You see this?
Oh.
You know, the most expensive pedal in the Boss department is the old slow gear, which costs about, if you find it online, it's not available for many years.
Really? Were those like an 80s thing or a 90s thing?
Sorry?
Did those come out in the 80s or the 90s? Were they discontinued?
Yes. Yeah, it's continued for quite a while, the Boss as slow gear. And if you find them online, they would cost about $300, $400. So lately, the Moore released this one, which does exactly the same. It costs only $50 or $60.
I like that better.
It sounds like a violin. Just give you a slow attack.
Really? Oh, cool.
And also, last thing here is this. I'm not sure. I will here. Just stop screen share. How do I do that?
There should be like a little green button somewhere or something.
All right. This.
What have you got there?
This is the more what's called mode factory. It also costs about $60. It's something like a Leatherman
Okay.
acoustic.
Oh,
It has
I love that too.
11 effects
Yeah,
inside.
yeah.
I just need a little vibrator, so yeah, I just need a little phaser or Ottawa or flanger or anything. Yeah. 11
Yeah.
effects, and it's quite cheap, so it's very handy.
Yeah, it's like a all-in-one. You know, who I can't remember the name of the pedal company that makes them. Newhauser or Newben something or other. I can't remember.
This
New neighbor.
New Neighbor. Yeah,
NEU, new neighbor. Yeah.
yeah. They've got like this like zombie pedal that can do anything. You can just like download whatever you want it to be. You just buy the program and you plug it in. But
Oh, yeah.
Rob can talk about that in a little bit. Like that one was pretty. That was the first time I ever saw that done. And then the tone print kind of evolved it. And now More, right? Leave it to More to kind of make this kind of all-in-one pedal. Like I mean, if you had one of those for the bass and the melody side, it's like you're pretty much done, right? Like you could just kind of. Does it have like reverb or delay?
This one? No.
Okay,
It has
population.
chorus, flanger, phaser, envelope phaser, tremolo, starter, vibrato, univibe, Ottawa, Touchwa, and the useless envelope ring modulator.
Yeah. I never ever got that. That's so funny you should say that because I totally agree with you. That's totally
Yeah, I challenge people to tell me, is there really a song, a hit song, which I know, which has ring modulator?
none.
They found something with an intro with ring modulator. That's
Cool. Well, listen, boys, what we'll do is
Uh-oh.
if we don't hit these SY300 questions in this session, you and I will get together and talk about it because like we could talk like easily for an hour or two about that. Because I just figured out, and maybe what I'll do is I'll go now and then we'll hit Dan and then let Rob do his thing. We lost Rodrigo, but that's okay. Maybe he'll be back. So the big, really exciting this week is actually like 2 weeks ago I started a gig at JPL, so that was pretty gnarly, and I wanted to like freak out and like I don't even know how to find the words. It's a blessing, and I'm super excited, and so that was kind of my big thing. It's a big change. I'm not living in Temecula like with the family. I'm staying up in Santa Monica. I'm possibly looking for a place, and so you know, and I'm working out in Pasadena now. So that's been a big change. And prior to that, I stopped practicing. I stopped playing a lot, and it was really hard. Maybe 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks, and then finally, you know, I got like the courage up to like actually pick up the instrument. And then I actually had like a whole day to myself, and I used that day just to plug in everything, and I told myself what I really wanted to do, and I wrote it down, and I wrote out how I was going to do it, and that was that I really wanted to make use of my disaster area DMC 3XL Gen 2. And so this is a MIDI controller that has 3 switches, and they're positioned kind of like that, right? So imagine you've got 2 kind of in the front, and then a third one kind of in the back, and it's like the size of like a Dynacomp or something like that. And it's so it's so feature rich. It's unbelievable. And then you can buy these things with this thing that rotates on the side, right? And you can put it on the left side, or you can put it on the right side. And the disaster area pedals are so, like, they're very versatile. So what you can do is you hold down the middle pedal and you go to MIDI channel 1, which means you can use program change through your, let's say, your Big Sky, which is what I use. So now I've set up all my reverb settings in such a way that, like, I have sets of 3, and they're kind of logical sets of 3. And some recur in these sets of 3 because I use them a lot. But I'll have different kind of sets of 3. So when I hold down the button in the middle, it turns it on, and then I can go through the programs. And then what I can do is I can use the roller on the side of the pedal to turn up the feedback of the reverb, so it just goes on forever. So it's similar to if you hold down the button on the Big Sky, like Rob G, you've probably done this, where you hold down the button and it just washes over you. It's just like this crashing wave that is forever crashing. And so that was cool, but what was happening was I couldn't get the program change to work on the SY300. So what I did was what did I do? I made a change in the Big Sky so that it was passing through the MIDI, because I wasn't doing that before. The SY300 was set to Omni, which means it was reading every single MIDI channel. So then what happened was that I actually fixed the SY300 so I could use this pedal to use both pedals. So now I've got the Big Sky as well as the SY300. And mind you, these two pedals are on different chains in my melody side. So when I'm using my volume pedal, I'm moving to one side or the other side, or kind of a hybrid sound of the two of them. So anyway, okay, I'm getting there. I figured out that you have to have MIDI channel through set up on the Big Sky so that it passes through. And when it passes through to the SY300, I had to turn off the MIDI Omni on the SY300 so it wasn't reading every middle channel, it was reading a specific MIDI channel. Then what I did was I set up the disaster area pedal 2, or no, I set up the Big Sky to read on MIDI channel 1 and the SY300 to read on MIDI channel 2. So then what you can do is you use the disaster area pedal to switch between pedal A and pedal B, and then, so now I'm controlling on two sides of my melody side, I'm controlling each pedal independently. And then I've got the roller to turn up the feedback or affect whatever MIDI channel I want to, so that's been super exciting. And now the final step will be adding a Pigtronics Infinity Looper. So I want to come back to that pedal, and I want to give it a try and see if I can get the MIDI to work the way I want to, because the disaster area, it actually has a third slot for looping, so it actually supports loopers. So it can loop, it can do reverse, and it can stop and pause and do all this kind of stuff. So that's the big news for me, and so that's been really exciting. It's gone on too long, but I'm super excited about it. So Dan Chapman, you are up, sir.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're all doing like 2 or 3 minutes of what we're doing and like what's going on. And you had that video post, which was really rad recently.
Yeah, I wanted to get that out. We made that just before last stick camp, and it was really challenging to edit at that time. But after that, it's been just challenging to do that. I interviewed Emmett in Utah about a couple of weeks ago at Stick Enterprises, and I'm scheduled to do another one soon.
Yes. So no, wait, a quick moment on that, all right, without like being weird about it. Like,
yes,
we've waited a long time for this, right? I mean, like.
Oh yeah. Well, Utah has been very camera shy in her history, even taking photos when I was a teenager or young man, taking pictures of the family. She was always the one who was the most uncomfortable, and I think finally she agreed to do it, and it turned out fabulous. I mean, we touched on all these different topics of how they met, and the days in Germany where she grew up, and her father as a anti-Nazi guy in Germany during the war, and how he had to hide out in the forest to avoid the people of the community who were spies who wanted him to join up. And it sort of gives you a sense of, why she fell for an independent guy like Emmett. So somebody who's really doing something completely different and not a joiner.
Right.
And it's sort of a built-in ethic. I really wanted to get that part, and we touched on that. And there's a lot more that we didn't touch on because it was challenging to get lighting and everything set up. I also want to interview Gracie. I'm going to try to get her within the next week or two.
Emmett's punk rock daughter. I can't wait. That's going to be so cool.
Yeah, she's.
Does Gracie actually? Does she play a lot?
She met her husband in a metal band, and they were both headbangers, and so whenever they I think he still plays, but she doesn't play as much in the band. I'm not sure how much music she's doing. They have she has like 3 horses, and she has a place she bought way the heck out in the north side of the valley in Aqua Dulce, which is way up near Lancaster area. That is horse country in Los Angeles. You don't get too many horses, in the city here. So
Hey, Dan, can I ask you a question?
Of course.
A joke. Do you know how to make $1 million as a horse owner?
No. I wish I did, but I'm not a horse owner, so it wouldn't matter anyway.
Start with $2 million.
Well, I thought that's a musician's joke.
No, that's a horse joke. Like,
okay.
yeah.
It could apply to musicians.
The one that I
as
thought
well.
was so funny about musicians is like drives a $500 car,
right?
Gets paid $50, pays $5 per year, plays a $5,000 instrument, something like that.
Right.
Well, that's exciting to hear because I know that. Like we talked that night, and I was like giddy. I was so happy with that.
Right. Right. Well, the other big news is that I interviewed Gene Perry, and that was a sensational night. We got together and we had some dinner here, and then we did an interview, and it went really well. And then he turned the tables on and interviewed me on camera. So
that's cool.
I've got some of that, and all will eventually be edited together for some big extravaganza documentary that I am promising for years. I've been working lately with my son, who has started to seriously do commercial production now. He's got a partner who works for a big company that produces commercials.
That's
and
great.
so they've been getting together and doing stuff and have some serious building a serious group of clients. And so far, a lot of investment and payoff will hopefully be coming soon.
Well, he's been.
So I've been helping with that
too. Get a talk with him for a while, right?
Yeah. He's helped me. He's been on shoots. He's been on concerts. He did him and I did the Railboard shoot together with Kevin Keith, and all that stuff. That when Emmett first announced the Railboard, we produced a little mini commercial for that, I guess, music video.
That was great.
And he was big behind that. So I'm learning a lot from him. He's I taught him a lot about what I learned in advertising and print media, and now he's pulling me along and teaching me how to make commercials. So we're working on a PSA, sort of a music video about for a woman who is involved in animal rescue. She's rescued like 500 dogs, and she's got a company called Hand and Paw.
Where is that?
We're doing a music video for her. She's in like up in the hills above Monrovia. Really nice area. Very beautiful house.
Nice.
And she is involved in that. It's sort of up near where you work. Are you going to get a place in Pasadena, Gene?
It was interesting. I was looking
for one.
I was looking out to Hunga, I thought I'd give it a try, and I found this house that was made in the 20s, but it's like kind of sketchy because there's like 2 other guys on the property. There's 2 different structures, and like the restrooms in the other structure, but I'd be living in this one that doesn't have the bathroom, so I'd have to go out there and then like unlock a door to go use the restroom.
Outhouse.
It was all kind of, and she's like, I also have an emergency potty just in case you need to. I was like, I'm a grown man, I know.
I have all these projects that I really have in mind. Like I think I just heard today on a podcast, Louis C.K. Was advising this executive producer of making a show, one of her shows called I don't know. It's the woman who played his wife in Louie, and she's got a new show out called Better Things, and he was advising her, well, I don't know how to write a TV show, and he said, don't write, just make scenes, just don't worry about story, It'll write itself. So I think that's what I'm going to do as an approach to the documentary too. Just pull together really great scenes like that stick circle at Freehands Academy in 2014. That one, I have a big plan to orchestrate it with some music.
Wow.
And because there was a, it was like there was a certain amount of tribal thing happening there. And I think that would be that I think is a really important moment that happened.
If that had gotten any gnarlier, we would have burned that place down.
Yeah, there's a really stick community world moment that happened there. So,
but
plus
except that
all the
Greg
stick
Howard
camp
and
stuff.
Jackie weren't there, which was like we.
But Greg started it.
That's right.
He was not there during the testimonial part of it.
That needs to go at the beginning, like in writing. Like Greg Howard, this was Greg Howard's idea, like, because it really was. And it was the year before.
Right.
And I was like, oh, I'm so close, and there's too many sticks. And then we started doing it, and I was like, oh, now I get it. Now I get it. We're all making the same sound together. And then pretty magical.
But the sound needs something. I need to bring like a composer into it to make sense of it, because all those sticks together is just like boom 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 boom, and it's like one note, and then the other guys are doing but it really could use some cohesiveness. And that's just the musical part of it. The rest of it,
make Emmett do it.
The rest of it was amazing.
Drag him out of his shell and make him do the music. Yeah, good luck. Right?
I think there's some people who do that really well.
Okay. Hey, well, listen, we should,
like a sound designer, composer type person. Like even Don Schiff would probably do.
That's a great.
Or even Greg. Or
no further, right? I mean, who better? Who better to do it? That's who probably Emmett would want to do it, right? If you asked Emmett, he'd be like, "Well, get Don," right? I mean, like what he did.
Right. Yeah. Well, I was thinking of asking my friend Bruce Hannafin, who's a composer who does, all these action adventure TV shows like Ice Road Truckers and the ice fishing in Alaska show. What's the name of that one? Deadliest Catch and all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
You'd be good.
That would also be good.
I'm pulling a favor there, so that's what I'm
hit him up.
Thinking.
Hey, well, listen, let's check in with Rob here, right? It's been too long. Great to hear, Dan. Everything's going well.
Thank
Rob, welcome back. So good to see. We're saving best for last.
Yes.
Also, longest for last. So, I guess we're doing news, but am I at the 2 or 3 minute thing, or what?
Well, actually, now it's you. Like we want to talk gear, right? I'm sure like you and Bo will talk gear and stuff like that. But yeah, definitely start with what's going on, man.
All right. So when I returned to Stickist, I put an announcement thread called Rob Safarian Returns, and that recaps this, in some detail. But basically, at the end of May, I was right at the cusp of finally assembling my prototype.
Mm-hmm.
And I was taking a last look at the wiring diagram I'd made. And at this point, I'd been working on this to either figuring out how the original idea could work, straight through to studying patent law. I've been working on this for 4 years at this point. Jeez. And the whole time managing, constant pain and levels of fatigue that started at, just life-destroying and ridiculous, up to fairly manageable within a limited understanding of what the day-to-day routine would be. So I still had, good days and bad days, and I still do. And so I'm looking at this wiring diagram, and it's the first good day I've had in like 3 weeks. And I look at it, and I'm following wire by wire. I'm imagining the entire circuit, player moves this switch, what does it do, where does it go? And I'm looking at it, and I realize this doesn't work. There's a fundamental problem here. And it's one of those things that I would explain, but that kind of gives away the show. You know what I mean? So
sure.
I thought, okay, all right, I'm not going to let this just bowl me over. I'm not going to get depressed. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to think through the nature of the problem and figure a way around it. And so I thought about it for 3 days, and I came up with an alternative. And then I said, okay, look, that was a Friday. All right, so this started on a Tuesday. So on the Friday, I had an alternative. I said, look, I'm not going to declare this ready to build, or more properly assemble, right, assembling parts into something else, until I'm certain. So I'll take the weekend and make the decision on Monday. And sure enough, on Sunday evening, I discovered that wasn't a solution. That isn't a way around it. There's a fundamental problem. And what it comes down to is the kind of switch I need nobody makes. I don't know why they don't make it, but they don't. And I'm not getting into the switch manufacturing business. You know, that's not the idea. So I made my notes as to the nature of the problem, what would fix it, how I would implement the fix if this part became available, so forth and so on. And then I just tabled it. And I resolved that I'll keep a lookout, and if that kind of switch ever becomes available, I'll move forward. And it's just one of those things where I know of no reason why it's not made. It just isn't. And you're talking about a small part where you'd probably have to order 1,000 at a time for a custom job. And if I was going to do that, I'd just as sooner afford housing the rest of my life. You know what I mean? That's not money I'm getting into. So I have been for the last 2 months, roughly, or 3 months, on this pattern of, okay, so the invention isn't happening. I'm not saving for a patent application. I'm not filing to start a company and register and all those other things to, get my tax ID for wholesale parts and so forth. And it was like, if you've seen the movie The Princess Bride, right? When Inigo says, I've been in the revenge business so long, now that it's over, I don't know what to do with my life.
Yeah.
And it was a very real moment that was exactly like that, because for 4 years, that had been some of the most difficult of my life in terms of my health problems. And just for those of you who don't know, I've lived in constant pain, literal constant pain from the day I was born. A major achievement of my childhood was being able to sleep through the night because I would wake up screaming in pain.
Amazing.
And that feels a little weird to say on camera, but anyway,
that's all right.
That's the background, that's the context. And so those 4 years as a practical application of day-to-day getting things done, working toward some kind of future, because you can't just, if you have a bad day and you take it easy on yourself, that can't go week after week, month after month, because then you're not doing anything, right? So those 4 years, I was really they were critical in that way of managing day to day, good day, bad day. And so all that was over. And it was one of those moments where you get tempted to get depressed, and you can feel like depression wanting to start, and you're like, not doing it, right? I've been through worse, I know better. But the thing that got me, I hate to make a reference to the American Civil Rights Movement in the 60s, but the song Keep Your Eyes on the Prize, right? That general idea, that was it.
You might have to remind us of a few lines from it.
Oh, no. I don't know why everybody wants to get me to sing lately, but it keeps happening. When I get some training, yes. Until then, no.
You can say the words. We won't make you sing.
Anyway, just what it was the tail end of the chorus. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Gotcha.
That's what was looping in my head.
Yeah.
And that's why I bothered to figure out all the stuff I figured out over those 4 years in terms of how to manage my symptoms. All manner of things, sleep scheduling and dietary concerns and just so many things. I could fill an hour talking about that, right? But the reason I did that was I was trying to find a way to get out of it, to be able to prototype the invention, patent it, start the company, and slowly but surely get some kind of revenue stream and get out of poverty and get on with my life. And so it was a weird moment of like, did I do all that for nothing? And no, of course I didn't, right? I did that because I cared about having a better future, and that hasn't stopped, right? Yeah. But I had to figure out, what's that future going to be? And I looked around the room, and I thought of two things. The first was debt, and the second was music. So
Things that are inevitable in your life, Rob.
yeah, and you might say one causes the other.
In all of our lives as well.
So the debt part was for a while there. Well, for the first couple of years of that 4-year span, I wasn't spending money on parts. I was drawing wiring diagrams. I was studying guitar history and amplifier history, and then how pedals worked. All of my sort of gear houndness. I had an interest in gear when it started, but then I had to learn gear because when you develop an electric guitar circuit, your invention is what's between the musician and every other piece of gear they own, and where it is in the signal path and how they combine in different ways. I had to get to grips with pretty much all of it, and that took a good bit of time. And so towards the end of like the 3rd year, I started buying parts, buying equipment, and I had pretty much afforded it. But then in January of this year, I realized I needed additional equipment. I needed to test in different ways, and I had used up my budget. I'd already spent the money I had for parts, and I had to go into no interest debt, which is a lot better than interest bearing debt, but still, debt is debt, as a way of preserving my cash flow, because I didn't want to get in a situation where I had to not.
You dropped out a little.
Oh, I didn't want to get in a situation where I had to avoid buying certain foods or something, right, in order to make the nut, as the old slang is. So this mixer that's next to me, I made a thread on Stickist about it last year. This NASA control board looking thing, I love it so much. So many blinking lights. Oh,
I love it.
Yeah, you saw me reaching over to it earlier. Anyway, I love it. So this thing I bought last July 2015, and I paid it off on Thursday.
Oh,
yay!
A former roommate owed me some money, and he was able to pay it back, and that was enough. So this, starting next month, I'm plus $29 a month. And
nice.
Anyway, so this was simply a matter of I needed to run 2 mics at once, and I couldn't do that with my audio interface that I had. And then there were some other things involved. But what I realized is, 3 years, no interest, pay the cost per month, and then whatever I needed to do with audio, this would handle it. Right? It's so much more than I needed in quantity that I could never worry about running out of channels or whatever. And because it is sort of a full-blown mixer, it has all those inputs and outputs so that you can cheat and get more channels by wiring this output to that input, you know what I mean? So it does all the mixery things. And so that was the idea. But come July, come the following January this year, I realized I needed other amps, because the one I had, I started off thinking like I needed massive high gain, right? Because one of the things the circuit could do was provide way more output from a guitar. And so it's like, well, people who like more output tend to have high gain amps. But more importantly, would that level output cause like a horrible shrieking noise or something, right? Let's start with that and work back to the easy part, which is low gain. And what I found was the amp I chose, which was the Eddie Van Halen 5153 50 watt head. It's controlled chaos. That's why it's able to have so much gain and not make its own horrible noise. It's controlled chaos. And so slamming that thing with more output, maybe that control circuitry would affect it, right? I needed something more raw. And so then I got a clone of a 1957 Fender Champ, right? It's unbelievably naked amp. And so if I was going to make an amp go crazy, then that one would go crazy, you know? And so these different scenarios came to mind, and I had to get some more equipment, not just for like testing amps, but I also had to get like different tools to construct stuff and measure stuff. I got a meter that measures inductance to see how the circuit was going to affect the overall inductance. A lot of guitar players don't understand how important inductance is in the pickup's output. And so anyway, all this additional stuff that I had to finance because I'd spent my money and I had to preserve my cash flow because let's not forget, January is a winter month, right, on the East Coast of the United States. Heat is expensive. And as it turns out, we had a very late winter, so it was like second week of April, stuff was still freezing. So anyway, I picked up this debt. It was manageable. I was okay. I wasn't going broke, but I needed to get out from under it, because whatever my life's going to be, I can't get there if I'm paying $93 a month, right? Because I'm already 10% below the poverty threshold gross, right? So 93 a month, that's more than 10% of my monthly
Ouch.
gross. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like I can't afford actual rent, not by a long way. And if I'm going to get there, that $93 is critical to getting there, right? So I knew that right away, whatever I'm going to do, I've got to pay down debt. And the roommate was able to repay what he owed, which allowed me to pay off the mixer and all the guitars that are normally in this room, that are guitars that I've owned at various stages, because that was going to be the prototype. And then I found out some reason why I couldn't use it, or this was going to be a testing contrast. So I do the prototype and then I do this other one back to back, A/B, and listen to the differences and so forth.
Now, what about the bass uke? Are you still using that?
The what?
The little bass uke that you had?
Oh yeah, I still got that. I haven't used it, but I've got it. And so, real quick, I've got stuff listed for sale. Something sold recently. As soon as I get the money, we'll get there. Right. The moral of the story here is that in that 4-year span, I basically didn't play music. I noodled a bit, but basically everything was me thinking about some aspect of the invention. And so when I was noodling, I was trying different things that affected output, or that affected, sympathetic resonance or whatever, right? I wasn't really playing a musical instrument to make music. And all the stuff I knew about theory and about all my sense of rhythm, right? I mean, it just all went away. Everything that I last had as a guitar player in March of 2012, it was all gone. And so by the time I got my stick at the end of March 2015, I believe it was March 30th, I wasn't a musician anymore when I got it. And as Greg could attest about my first couple of lessons, I'd forgotten it all. I had no frame of reference. And as I wrote in my thread on the subject, pity Greg, he had to teach somebody a first stick lesson who wasn't used to controlling their left hand. Like, Greg had to tell me that my left wrist wasn't relaxed. I'm a spastic. I thought that was off because it's always that tight. So he had to tell me that wasn't a relaxed wrist. It's like that wasn't awkward for me. I'm used to it, but it must have been intensely awkward for Greg. So anyway, when I had my stick, I enjoyed playing it immensely, and it felt like music was accessible. There's a thing about the stick; it's like all the notes are just right there. Josh had this great thing. It's the easiest instrument to play in the world. You point at a note, and you know what I mean, and you hear it.
Right.
It's a great line,
Just
but it's
point at
also,
it.
yeah, you just point at it, and there it is. But also, I found that as a guitarist, you have to learn mapping the fingerboard, right? But on a stick, I could just look at it, and there's notes. I don't know. It just made sense. And I could intuitively put one finger there, and the other fingers, it just worked. And maybe it's because I spent years reading about the stick before I owned one, right? But let us hope. But anyway.
Add something to that. Let me just add something to that. Something that I've found with the kind of stick. It makes it so appealing is that you can get into bad kind of habits with it, and Lord knows I have. I found something simple that works for me. But you kind of touched on patterns, and there's something about the type of person that plays a Chapman stick, and just that personality that latches onto that visual element and is able to interpret it in such a way that the music that is created almost always is unlike anything anyone's ever heard. It's always brand new, it seems. And everyone plays it differently. Everyone's got different techniques. It's so versatile. Just like you're saying, it's like when I pick it up, I just get in a great mood because I just feel like I'm doing something that's so expressive and so personal. And it doesn't happen naturally. You have to do a lot of kind of practicing to get there. But it is so rewarding, even if you just have like a simple understanding of a stringed instrument, and you you understand how you don't want to mute strings, put the crossover, and you understand, and you just let, like, the strings are upside down. No, they're actually right where you want them to be. Like, you just have to unlearn that and let that go, and that's certainly what. Like, anyways, getting back to patterns, the idea of something about a stickist personality that they use.
So
Interesting.
when I would practice stick in 2015, it was sort of only on my good days I could do it, and it seemed to kind of create new bad days because when I said that it was like playing stick rewired my brain, I wasn't joking. I was referring to actual neuroplasticity, like it affected my sleep cycles. There was some
Wow.
real significant changes going on. After my first lesson with Greg, I think I wrote it in the thread. When I stood up from the chair after an hour and a
Yeah.
half with Greg, I stood up into a different world. I turned left, and it didn't feel like turning left. And make all the Zoolander references you want, but I mean, it was an hour and a half of my first lesson, and already my bilateral coordination. I don't know how familiar other people are with that, but bilateral meaning left side, right side coordination. It was better from the moment I stood up. I walked differently, noticeably differently, and
Wow.
so whereas that was enormously beneficial, and Emmett knew about it and specifically referenced it a few times, and that was very heartening. The trouble with that is when you're managing good days and bad days, you can't afford to just have a couple of days where your brain's busy rewiring itself. Like, you need your good days when you can get them. And it became part of my fatigue management not to play stick. And I hated that. But it's a trade-off I had to make. And by the time I got to September that year, 6 months later, not quite 6 months later, I guess it was August, I was looking ahead in my budget projection, as I am wont to do. I think the last month in my budget projection is like the end of January 2021 or something right now. Like, that's the other thing, is when I would take on this debt, this no interest debt, I had every monthly payment for the entire term in my budget projection. I knew I could afford it. Worst case scenario.
Damn.
Yeah. Because that's how, some people seem to think that they don't have enough money to need like a budget or a budget projection. The less money you have, the more you need a budget. It's not about what you have to spend. It's about what you don't have to spend. At least that's
Right.
my perspective. So
Sure.
Anyway, I was looking at my budget projection, and I realized, look, if this is a bad winter, I'm done. I don't have food money, and I've got to sell equipment. The only equipment I've got that's worth anything is musical equipment, and it can't be anything related to the invention, and it's got to be something to bring in a significant amount of money quickly. And that's when I realized I had to sell my stick. And I called Gene. I said, hey, can we talk? And honestly, you were busy with something. I don't remember what. And so I called Greg, and we had a quick talk about it. And basically it boiled down to, do what you got to do. Don't rush the decision. And I said, well, what price should I list? I don't know. I mean, I know what I need, right? And I know that sticks hold their value, but I'm not looking to get the highest amount of money I can. What I'm looking to have is this money in hand before it gets cold, right?
Yeah.
And granted, all right, I'm not Canadian cold, but I also have bony ankles, right? I'm not from that part of the world. So anyway, he named a price that he thought would sell fast, and he told me to email Emmett before I listed it for sale. And so I did, and I waited for Emmett's reply. And I wrote him. I don't have like that saved in Windows. I have to go to Linux to read it to you. But I included from one inventor to another. Right, this is something I have to do if my invention's going to get anywhere.
Yeah.
And absolutely sincere. And so I sold it within, I think it was 7 minutes. I think the fifth post in the thread
Damn.
was me saying sold. Like when Greg named that number, he was right.
Yeah.
And I could have gotten more for it, but I didn't need more for it. I needed money in hand to know I was going to be okay. And as it turns out, the vast majority of that money went to two things. First was heating. Okay, three things.
Necessities.
Heating, food, and then allowing me to afford these monthly payments that I ended up making on gear I didn't know I was going to finance at that time. And so I have over there in the dark. There's a Marshall DSL 40C, which is a 52-pound 1x12 combo amp.
Wow.
They don't make that model as a head, which is why little old me has a 52-pound combo amp. There is this speaker in this cabinet behind me. I call this my big bottom cab. It's a 1x15 guitar cab.
That looks
And
nice.
yeah, it's really remarkable. If you're familiar at all with what a Celestion Greenback does for guitar mid-range, kind of growl and grind, this does the same thing for your sixth string that a normal Greenback does for your third string. It's just incredible. Your low notes are equal citizens. It gives you a whole new perspective on amps, because you didn't know that like the low notes would get overdriven too. Like it's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
And anyway, this was
What an adventure.
Yeah. I financed the speaker. My dad assembled the cabinet out of scrap lumber. So in parts, other than the finance speaker, which by the way, the speaker's like $4 a month, right?
Wow.
The parts are like $85.
Mhm.
So and the cheapest I could find something like that was $400 empty, right? So good thing my father's a master carpenter. But there were all these adventures I went through in various equipment for testing various kinds of things. And it was all sitting around me when I thought, well, what am I going to do now? And I thought of two things: debt and music. And so the first thing was, here's all this stuff I owe money on, and the only way I can pay it off is to sell it. Well, if that's the case, what's my musical future going to be like? And so I hit upon pretty rapidly this idea of stick or bust, right? And
I like it.
yeah. And I was thinking alto because it's got a shorter scale length. The lowest root I could play in my left hand on the rail board was the 10th fret. And of course the rail board is a bit shorter than a normal stick. It's 34, not 36 inches. So hand movement can help a lot, right? But at some point, if you're playing a chord, you have like a root that's an anchor, and then you got to stretch, you know? You can move your elbow, but you still got to be able to do it. And so I worked out that I needed to get the shortest stick I could, which was an alto, thinking that it needed to be narrow. But then I looked on the Stick Enterprises website, I looked at the width specs, and I pulled out a measuring tape, which is actually right next to me, right? And I got the little metal tab on the measuring tape. I got that against my knuckle, right? Or against my thumb, because I'm like, okay, that's the beveled edge, right? And I did the stretch. And I'm like, okay, so I've got an SG12 by like 3/4 of an inch. Okay, SG12 it is, right? And so thus began my return to the rig building thread, right? When I posted the first post in, what was it, like 13 or 14 months?
Yeah.
And, I put it, by show of smileys, how many of you knew this was coming, right? Because I posted the Rob Stefarian returns, and it was like less than 2 days, and I've got a post in rig building. And it's the first time anybody's posted in more than a year, And so, anyway.
Only Boris has more.
So, anyway, I got back to that planning, and I hit upon something fairly significant. And this is kind of a theme with me and stick.
Great.
So the first time I was going to get a stick was back in 2012, and it was, I believe it was July. And I had a plan to move out of my parents' house, which was the only household I'd ever lived in, because for the most part, if you're like significantly disabled, and more on that in a moment, but if you're significantly disabled, you're pretty much guaranteed to live in poverty. It's just the way it is. And so I had the rare option of housing that was clean and safe and affordable, right, by me. And so back in 2012, I wrote on the forum, it's like, look, I can move out of my parents' house or I can have a stick. And I'd rather, try and build a life, right, rather than have a stick. And so that was the first time I didn't get a stick, right? Mm-hmm. And then the second time was after I'd moved out of that apartment after my grandfather had died. I moved in with my grandmother, and she was going to buy me a stick. She wouldn't let me buy one, and I wouldn't let her buy it for me. So we agreed on a no interest loan, right? And she constantly said, well, you won't have to pay it back. And I constantly said I would, right? And so grandmothers, you know what I'm saying? It's like if you have the privilege of having a grandmother that can pull stuff like that off.
I wish I had one.
Yeah. And anyway, so when that stopped, my ability to repay her was based on not prototyping the invention. I'd already given up on ever affording that. And then I figured out a cheaper way to do it. So then I canceled that stick order and got to work prototyping. That was the autumn of 2013, right? So that's 2.5 years before I realized the invention wouldn't actually work. And
after that, I remember that.
yeah. So then fast forward to, okay, I have got, so what happened in April of 2014, and I know I'm going on, but there's no short way to say this, right? What happened in April of 2014 is I shifted to a different government program. The one I was on, which there's a thread in the lounge about it, right? That goes deep, and it's in the lounge because some of that may upset people, right? But I was on a program that limited the amount of money I was allowed to have and the amount of income I was allowed to have. And it forced me to stay 30% below the poverty threshold. There was no, I figured out how to do something and I'm a little bit better now. No, I had to stay 30% below the poverty threshold as a maximum, both monthly, and there was a limit of how much I could have in the bank. And it was particularly galling for the government to pretend that a, from birth permanent neuromuscular disorder is going to magically be cured by having $2,000 in the bank. I mean, that's just insane. But yeah, if you had $1,000 in the bank, they'd cut you off. And the only way to get back on would be to provide a list of things you spent money on to get back below that limit. And if they approve the list, you get to go back on. But you have to have already was. And basically, right, just never get $2,000 in the bank. But don't worry, you're not getting enough income for that to ever be a problem. So I left that program in April 2014. Wow. And I went on something that paid more money, but most importantly, allowed me to save money. If I could manage to save money, it wouldn't hurt me. I mean, that previous program, SSI, which of course still exists, SSI is so crazy that if a relative decides to give you a chunk of money, it's bad because now you're over the limit. Like it's incredibly bad. So I was off that in April 2014. I have significantly more income, and I could save it. And right away, my first thought was, does this mean I get to have a stick, right? And so I worked out that, yeah, if I saved just as much as I did back when I lived in that apartment, and was barely making rent, barely making food money, if I saved like that longer, I could do a stick. And so that's what I set out to do, and it was the June after that April, so June 2014 is when I reached out to Greg, like, hey, can I try some sticks? That July is when he came over. That August is when I placed my order, right? And then almost 9 months to the day, March 30th, 2015 is when my stick arrived. Well, what happened in between was in September 2014, my grandmother died. And I wrote about it on the forum. And it was, I mean, when any family member dies, it's awful. But one you live with, that was really hard because I was, in effect, the first responder. And I heard the worst sound I ever heard in my life. So, and that sound's still in my head. And so when she died, my ability to live here affordably changed dramatically. And that was when I sort of set about this ridiculously resolute, like, I'm not canceling this order, right? This is the stick I'm getting. This is, I didn't have it in my head that it was like for her or something, right? But it was, when I placed the order, I knew that this was my one shot to get a stick. This was the one time that this amount of money was going to give me any extra, because it wasn't that much money, This is the one time I can make this sacrifice and make it work. And I wrote about it on the forum, and I was right. I'm not going to get that kind of opportunity again. So that leads me to what I was saying about paying down debts and stuff. Is when I made those lists in rig building and figured out I could actually, like, my hands could manage an SG-12, because I don't know if we have any sense of scale here, but I have fairly long fingers, right? So the reason that I get so particular about my left hand is I'm much more spastic in my left wrist and my left hand. And so for my hand size, I actually basically I effectively have a much smaller hand for what I can stretch. Like, because if I really stretch to where I'm maybe like my hands physically could do that, now one spasm in my wrist and I'm severely injured, right? It's about staying within the sort of safe zone for if my wrist suddenly does something. So anyway, what I realized is just like back in 2012, where if I buy a stick, I can't move out. When I was looking at, okay, what's my future now, and I'm not starting a company and hopefully getting some revenue from that, I realized that, like I said, the only way I was $3 a month in payments. But the other thing was, because it was going to take like everything I had to find an apartment, move out there, try and make something work, I knew that the stick had to wait because it's not as cut and dry as 2012 or 2014, but still it's stick or future. And
Sure.
in this time span, about in terms of symptom management and so forth, is I learned a lot about medicinal cannabis. And I actually, like all would-be novelists, right? I came up with a novel where the main character was basically me, not exactly me, but basically me. And so, as part of the novel research, I learned a lot about cannabis growing and how would somebody who's disabled manage it? Because right away I learned that there's no market where it's legal, where it's cheap enough for somebody who's that poor to afford it, right? Because Medicaid doesn't cover it, right? So,
Yeah.
anyway, following that
Hey,
novel.
Rodrigo's here.
Hey, Rodrigo, welcome back.
How you doing?
Pretty well.
Good to see you.
So what I continued that research after I stopped writing the novel, because like all hobbyist writers, I have an abandoned novel, right? That's a credential. So anyway, I kept learning about it. And what I realized is, look, if I'm not starting the company, then I'm not getting out of poverty sort of on my own. And the only way I can work a job is medicinal cannabis. Because what I learned, once upon a time, the statute of limitations is long over, right? What I learned was that medicinal cannabis, what doctors had always told me, that my body didn't know how to do the right thing, right? My body did these things. I needed physical therapy to learn new techniques. I needed surgery to enable the training of the physical therapy, right? Well, all of that is because cannabis has been illegal since 1938, right? It turns out that when I have cannabis in my system, all of those muscle spasms, all of that muscle tightness, all that lack of coordination, all of that pain stops. Like somebody threw the off switch. Effectively,
That's unbelievable.
Effectively, I stopped being disabled. Now I still am. I still have balance problems and so forth, but it takes so much work to be me, so much physical work, that everything is so much easier. My fatigue goes away because managing this, it turns out when you turn it off, I'm Superman, right? There's so much less work involved. And so when I was thinking about, just in the last couple of months, how am I going to make my life into what it could be? I knew that there's no way without an income, and the only way to get an income is to live somewhere where medicinal cannabis is legal, and that's what enables me to get a job, right? And I stopped being unemployable. So the stick idea had to wait. Not that I'm not willing to talk about gear, but the stick idea had to wait because I have to get somewhere where it's legal, because that's the only way I'm getting a job, and that's the only way I'm affording dating, et cetera, right? I'm 32 years old. I've spent a decade, more than a decade, waiting for the rest of my life to start, due to complications of my disability, I've effectively never had in my teenage years. Well, my disability took me out of college, and then that's when it got so bad thereafter. So I didn't experience my 20s. And, I'm making pretty fast progress to not having my 30s. So realistically, it's going to take 3 to 5 years for me to progress from where I am now to being able to do whatever later, right? So that's what I'm looking at. What I'm looking at is make it possible and make the change when it comes up. And so that actually leads me to the end of this story, which is where we get sort of more purely into gear. Thank you for bearing with us. But the where this kind of catches up to the present day is just a couple of weeks ago. A friend of mine that lives in San Diego, one of his old friends moved to San Diego. So the first friend is a registered medicinal cannabis patient. The second guy is about to be. And they know about my novel research and all that. And they said, hey, Rob, what if we help you move out here? And you can be the brains, we'll be the brawn, and we'll all save money on growing our own medicinal cannabis. And
wow, that sounds great.
Yeah, and if what's the term that's used in California when you have ballot initiatives? Prop. That's it. If Prop 64 passes in November, then maybe we transition into commercial cannabis. And hey, Rob, you've got a job, right? That's kind of the.
Let me say a little something about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I won't name it. We have, I think it's a family. My uncle grows grapes. And,
Damn, we're going in and out of.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Visual. Yeah, it's going in and out, and you're disappearing sometimes on my screen.
Okay. I think it's just you.
Oh, okay.
The guy that does, I think it's marketing, or at least who he basically leases property from my uncle, and he grows grapes and he makes wine, and he's kind of like a middleman, right? So he goes in between the guys that are actually growing the grapes and people who are buying it. And he looked at medicinal marijuana and he's like, this is where all the money is. Like, in California, like, are you gonna grow grapes that are like mostly water, right? Take a lot of water, and you have to torture these plants. I mean, you have to torture them to get grapes. Or are you gonna go cannabis, which is frickin' weed anyways, which, I mean, like, you have to figure out as a boy, as a girl, and then you know what to do with it, right? And it's weed. You can use it for paper, you can use it for cereal, you can use it for clothes, like, it doesn't matter, but it just seems like, which is the more cash-rich crop, right? Maybe it's not grapes. So anyways.
Just to interject while you always hear me say cannabis and not marijuana, the word marijuana was never until it was used to prohibit cannabis legally. It was part of race baiting, this idea of Mexicans and this devil weed. And so I don't say marijuana. I say cannabis because that's its name. It's cannabis sativa.
I see.
Right. I've been thinking about that too. It's like that word is such a negative.
Yeah, it's before it was marijuana in law, it was hemp. It was all hemp. And so I call it cannabis because saying cannabis sativa all the time, okay, this is 21st century, right? Everything's about making stuff shorter, so I just call it cannabis.
Well, but I'm glad you told me that, Rob, because I never thought about that. But I appreciate it.
Like I don't mean to change the subject of the episode or anything.
Yeah,
but it's
an
just
anti-propaganda campaign.
Well, I've already explained why it matters so much to me. Like the first time I used it and I had that effect, that wasn't just like life changing. That was an existentialist. Like, I had no idea my existence could be that way, right? So I take this stuff very seriously. And, I try not to upset stoners who are just trying to have fun, but I take it very So,
you talk
anyway.
too much, man.
Oh, listen. The more all they got to do is ask me something about growing, and then they're happy, right?
Pass the bong, bro. Like, less time.
Oh man, somebody asked me a casual question once, and I gave them 15 minutes about water quality. Like, that was my opener. So, anyway, what's more important than water, right? So anyway,
what is Rodrigo? Where are you driving to?
Going home.
Let's take a quick.
Okay.
Actually, Rob, do me a favor here.
yeah.
What?
So,
Rodrigo.
Can you guys listen to me?
yeah.
I'm driving home. I just finished a gig, and in the meantime, I've lost power in my cell phone. So now that I'm back in the car and I have the connection, that's why I was out, and then I'm back in now.
Where
Anyway,
did
I'm
Wow.
driving, so
yeah.
I'm just listening, not even watching. But I'm listening to whatever you guys are saying. And
Yeah, don't watch too carefully. Don't watch too closely.
no, I just listen. You guys continue to talk about medicinal marijuana, and I'm just listening.
So
Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
anyway, getting back to the subject of gear, right? It's like I knew I had to put the stick as a sort of a someday thing, because that amount of money, if I get it, that's my moving fund to San Diego, right? Because and I hate to like ram this point home, but it's all of y'all well know. There's no cheap stick, right? There's no made in South Korea, almost as good stick. The instrument did not take off that way. There's no cheap point of entry. There's only relatively cheap, and they hold their value. So the emphasis on relatively, right? Um, so stick has to be a someday thing, and I had to ask myself, okay, do I want to give up music completely, or do I still want to be able to make music? And I said to myself, look, there's no cheap way to get into stick, but there is a cheap way to get into guitar, and that's the way I got into guitar. And I just don't think I'm going to leave guitar. So I'm going to sell all my stuff, all my gear, and I'm going to buy a cheap guitar that fits me. And that's what I'm going to do. That's going to be my future, and I'm gonna play this guitar. And that way, when I can afford a stick, I still have my music chops, right? I still understand rhythm. I still understand harmony, etc., etc. If it's as long as it could be until I can afford that much money, maybe I'll understand voice leading, right? So so that's the idea. So talking of my left hand and stretching. I need in musical instruments, there's a term called scale length, right? It's the distance from the nut to the bridge. The 12th fret has to be exactly the halfway point in order for that to be the octave on the string. And so sticks come in 3 scale lengths, right? The alto and the SG12 are 26.5 inches. The rail board is 34 inches, and all other sticks are 36 inches. I think that's right. The NS stick might be different.
There's 36, yeah, 36 for the full scale with the X fret.
Yeah.
And 34 is the older one.
Right, and the rail board's 34.
The NS is 34.
Okay, the NS is 34. Thank you. Russell Keating, we miss you, right? Anyway, so in guitar, you basically have 2 major scale lengths. You have 25.5, that's Fender. You have 24 3/4 inch Gibson, generally. And so I was looking for things that were shorter, and I tried the South Korean version of Paul Reed Smith. He has a couple of models that are 24.5, and what I found was there's an aspect of nut width, string spacing, right? How far do your fingers have to stretch across the strings? That complicates it. And 24.5 is short, but Paul Reed Smith's models are actually wider string spacing than a lot of the vintage Fender style stuff. So that was too far, even at 24.5. And so what I found is the old Fender Mustang, right, from the mid-60s. That's the old style narrow nut Fender, but it's a 24-inch scale length. And that is small enough that my left hand can, not do everything right out of the gate, but that sort of learning to stretch further doesn't put me into the danger zone, right? It stays safe. So I did some reading on Mustangs. And by the way, Fender Mustangs, they have a devoted following, right? But basically they're forgotten. And that's why in 4 years of studying guitar history, I didn't know they existed, right? So that, and Fender has this weird habit of making them for a couple of years and then not making any for 4 years, and then they'll go, here's some for 6 months, and now we're not going to make them for 3 years, and it's very strange.
Like the Bronco.
Yeah. So it turns out that next month Fender's gonna bring out some new Mustangs, and they're not vintage correct, but I like that. I didn't want it to be vintage correct. I just wanted it to be that size, right? So by virtue of a guitar I've sold that is pending payment, right? That money that I get for that guitar will fund the Fender Mustang. and that's what I'll have. And I won't plug into an amp at all. I'll plug into my computer and use a computer game called Rocksmith, which kind of has an integrated amp sim, and it sounds terrible, but you know what? You can still hear something when you hit a string, you know?
Right on.
And that's what I'll do. And I'll become a player again because, I mean, in very real terms, I haven't been a guitarist since late 2011, or very early 2012. And then it's no other music since then, really. I mean, the bare minimum stick practice, but again, I was managing fatigue. So I'm going to learn to be a guitarist again. And then when I've got money for some kind of amp rig, I will buy a rig that represents what I actually play. You know, not knowledge of how gear works, and maybe I'll noodle on it, but what I actually play. And then, you know, sometime thereafter will be a stick. And but in terms of my stick planning, where I left off was the Green Boy Fearful 12.6, which has a single 12-inch woofer, a 6-inch mid-range, and a tweeter. And that would be powered by...
Like the Green Boy is such a big investment. It's so much money.
Yeah, and again, I have things I get really specific about, and one of those is speakers. Now, in the guitar world, your speaker is supposed to help you screw up the sound, right? It isn't supposed to be accurate. The speaker is effectively a filter after your amp, tone stack, and so it's part of determining your sound. But of course, in the bass world, where hearing your instrument is much more important, right? It's a different thing. You're not looking for an inaccurate speaker. You're looking for an accurate speaker. And when you start to think about bass reproduction in particular, being able to get those low notes out at all is actually more difficult than you think it would be. In fact, basically the rule in bass speaker cabinets is that those low notes don't actually come out. And a lot of the bass cabinets that have a really good low end and they sound huge, they got a spike at 100 hertz. That has nothing to do with your lower register notes at all. And in this, where I developed this perspective was when I started to get into stick. And I realized that, okay, I know guitar stuff backwards and forwards, but I don't know anything about bass, right? I don't know how low frequencies propagate in a room. I got nothing. And so I started learning. You know, I kind of dropped back to zero. Okay. And anyway, yeah, I'll wrap. So anyway, I got into the Green Boy stuff because I kept looking for this way to get low frequencies out, like actually get them out, because I grew up in a church that had a pipe organ, and that's how I learned to appreciate the lower register.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it turns out that, I mean, pipe organs are pretty special anyway, but especially the lower register of pipe organs it's pretty unique in all of musicdom, you know? When I was a kid and I was learning to appreciate low end from a pipe organ, I didn't realize I was being spoiled, and it makes sense that I got into like roots reggae and heavy funk and stuff. Just, you know, it started at like Motown, right? The Funk Brothers, and forward into funk and reggae. Is like I've been driven by low end my whole life, you know, and so it sort of makes sense that I would latch on to this way of getting the low end out. And oh, by the way, it's not a purely low end. It also does the mid range and the high frequencies too. And it just comes down to, for me, if you're gonna have a speaker, it ought to be a speaker that does what you want it to do. And in guitar, it's easy to do that 12 different ways affordably. But stick is a special challenge. So I went looking for how to do that. And the way I see it is I don't necessarily need a speaker, right? So when I get one, it be one that does the job, right? That's my perspective on it. Because, you know, I've talked a lot about expensive gear in my posts on Stickus, and it's not like taking money for granted. It's exactly the opposite. It's like until you really need it, why spend money, right? You could save over that time span and afford the expensive thing that does this job better. You know, buy right, buy once. But it all comes down to need, right? Obviously, if you're gigging out, you need something that will earn a paycheck this weekend, right? It's a different thing. But,
yeah. Also, so let me add something to that, and kind of put this out to everyone. You know, for the first Free Hands Academy, I had 2 sticks. I had to sell the third stick I ever bought, which was produced in one of the first factory, and it was a 34-inch scale one. It predated the metal bridge. predated the dual flaps. Like all these things were, it was an older stick, but I needed to afford Alfonso Johnson. And I needed to, it was like one of these things, and we've all had this kind of balance because the instrument is so expensive. Like something else has to wait. Something else, or you take a long time to think about it. It's not, right? It's not like an impulse buy. I mean, it is an intentional, slow march towards a Chapman stick. Someone doesn't just like manifest $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, double maybe, whatever. To make like something like that happen, like taxes and shipping. If you're out in Europe, like Boaz, I know you know what I'm talking about. Like that stuff gets pricey. So let me ask this to just kind of the audience, because Rob, we are getting kind of close to time, and I do want to get other people kind of perspective on what you're hinting at with money and with making a decision, like on your stick. So let me kind of put this to the forum. Has anyone, what was your sacrifice?
Well, my sacrifice has been doing this documentary because, and not being able to finish something that I really want to finish, and taking the time and allowing it to breathe over time, instead of finishing it immediately. I mean, it's a matter of budgeting investment. It's like you have investment that's really important investment that you have to live with, and then you have other investment that's maybe medium, and then other ones that are more high risk investment, and you have to parse all that stuff out in order to survive, really. So I've had to juggle that sort of thing, and that's a sacrifice for sure.
Sure, like kids and mortgage and keeping the lights on. Yeah, I can relate to that. How about you, Tomas? Did you have to sell some stuff, or how'd you get your stick? You're on mute, bro.
Sorry. About sell my stuff, my instruments. It's about money, because my plans about the trip. And I need a lot of money. Okay, to sell my bass, my 3 basses are sacrifice, a little sacrifice, but the stick is not for sale, of course.
Right, that's right.
Actually, my HT100, the Line 6 is for sale too.
Yeah.
And now I have a new configuration of pedals, more simple, really simpler. Just my loop station, my one reverb, and that is.
Yeah.
Because I need a more light equipment, less space,
Yeah, more compact.
Yes.
Yeah, more.
But maybe there I'm going to get new pedals, or no. But for the trip,
yeah,
I need to be simpler.
Yeah.
So, do you want a bass guitar? I have.
Oh yeah. Not want. You want to buy, right? You want to buy. So let me ask you the same question, because I know that you enjoy trying out new gear, and so how do you manage kind of buying and selling stuff?
Sorry, man. Sorry, I'm sleepy.
Oh, that's okay. No, I was asking Steve. Steve, can you hear me? Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, how do you? I know you like gear, right? You like gear. Oz is a connection, right? So.
For me, it's kind of interesting, but part of the gear things I've been doing, I've been redoing a lot of stuff that's aged. I've been playing something, ever since 4th grade. I started clarinet, worked the way up to bass guitar and so forth. And some of my stuff here has been aging. So like this year has been I've been actually focusing on replacing stuff. I did replace the NS stick. That NS I bought was one of the first 300 built. And I started to wear the frets down on it. And so I like the fret rails on the Grand that I have. So, that was one of the things I traded. But anyways, some of the stuff over the years I've been getting, I'm on the mailing list for a local guitar center, and this guy keeps sending me 15% off coupons. They already have their deals and so forth, and it's temptation gets the best of me there. I mean, I've got some nice new toys, but I have not paid the full price for any of them. I mean, I look at what Sweetwater's selling them for, and Musician's Friend, and a lot of the stuff, that we use as stick players, you can't buy from a local like Oz's shop and that. Some of these gear, even like Zoom pedals, a local music store cannot afford to stock Zoom pedals because they required an inventory that's huge. And so they don't sell them. So if you want some of this stuff, you got to get it from some of the big things like Guitar Center, Musicians Friends, Sweetwater, and so forth.
On that note, I remember having a hard time. I remember having a hard time to get going to a store to try an SY300.
Yeah.
The Guitar Centers wanted to carry them because they were too darn expensive. It just wasn't worth their time.
Well, there's a story behind that. I'm not sure you can trust what they say all the time because I'm not sure what's going on with them, but like Mesa Boogie dropped them. Some of there's been some brands have actually dropped them. So they that's the other part of the equation. There's, finding the gear, you see something you like. And, a lot of times we rely on the stickist.com, looking what are people buying? Does it work for you? And a lot of this, it's like Randy was my inspiration to get the Helix. I was looking for something that I could use as a central. I don't want a big giant pedal board.
Right.
So this thing with the routing capabilities, I got rid of a boatload of effects. And that's what I run is my central hub, and everything talks to each other. I mean, I've got looking back here, I've got the little Fishman amp. I've got 2 QSC K12s. All this stuff can work together. I can run that Fishman through the QSC if I wanted to.
Nice.
But yeah, and it's and then the Helix also is a no latency interface also. And you can also record the effect and the dry signal with a guitar. You can't do it with a stick. We found that out. No, hopefully at some point they do a little upgrade there in their software so that you can get another output to do that for people that want to do that. But the only thing that you can't do with the Helix is to buy amp, getting the signal, the raw signal and the effects signal to go into your DAW. That's the only drawback to it. You can do it with a guitar that's got a single input, but you got a stereo output. You don't have the connections for it.
I see.
Even though you have a stereo connection, it's just that they didn't assign that little parameter to the other thing you use for your bass input. That's all they need to change, and then you'd be golden, but they don't have it. But,
do you still have 2 signal paths?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It goes into the guitar in, and then one of the return jacks. There is an aux in, but that aux in is very strange. I mean, you can adjust the ohms, but for some reason that aux just doesn't work with the other side of your stick. You have to boost the signal with something in order to make it work. Actually, if you boost the signal, you can do the bi-amp thing. It will work. I did try it. There's a guy, I forgot his name, that's on the forum, but he was also on the Line 6 forum. And I went and I tried it, and yeah, I got it to work, but you got to boost the signal with something else.
I'm on that thread. I'm on that Line 6 thread. I think Randy Clare might be on that thread as well. Every now and then it resurfaces.
Things that happen to me with all this gear exchanging, and another place is really cool, and everybody here can deal with them too, is a place called Motor City Guitar, which is 45 minutes north of me. Those guys stock just about everything you can think of. All the Strymon pedals.
Yeah.
You can buy Strymons over the counter.
Yeah.
Eventide, Electro Harmonics, they've got everything you can think of. So I had a bunch of stuff, and at one point I was faced with a really strange decision. I could either sell outright for some money and take a hit, or I think for like 20 bucks more, I got this thing, a looper, the
Hold it up
new
a little.
Ditto X4.
Can you hold it up? Oh, okay. Yeah, I've been looking at this one. Yeah, yeah.
It's really a cool pedal. I haven't really been able to get into it. Again, that's one of the sacrifices is time. I've been, learning the Helix, and then, like I said, I also get studio monitors. I get a new interface, the Tac2 Zoom, and that's smaller. I've got space. Being able to grab something and go is important, especially when I go over to the Oz's. Having a big, massive pedal board or a collection of pedals is a time constraint. I mean, we go there. A lot of times I don't want to be the last one leaving, locking the place up because I got to gather all the gear and, make 10 trips to the car to get each pedal and speaker and all that.
Yeah.
If I bring the Helix, it goes with maybe a cabinet or two, or most of the time I just grab the little Fishman. That's why I kept the Fishman. It's a great little amp. And half the time I don't need a full rig to
Oh,
go
yeah.
there. I mean, I used the full rig when we were practicing for the performance last month. I was bringing it to Oz's, but I'll tell you what, um, I'm glad I went with what Randy said, because the real cool thing about the Helix is it's got that little the wah pedal, and which you can assign the control pedal.
That's
You
great.
can assign different functions. The XFX one that's similar to it does not have that on it. And it also does not have dual DSP. This has dual DSP, and you learn that when you start building your routing. The routing is very easy to do, by the way, and a lot of people are intimidated by it for some reason, but it's actually quite simple. I like back at Interlock, and I played the Chris Squire thing.
Yeah.
Now I actually have duplicated Chris Squire's rig in the Helix. I
Wow.
have a SVT for the bass. I have a Marshall amp for the melody side, and it goes into a crossover. So I can select the crossover frequency for which frequencies are going through the Marshall and which are going through the bass.
See, that's
I mean,
clever.
that's just awesome. I mean,
That's clever. Did he play through a Marshall?
yeah, I looked at, there's a site dedicated to him, and he did have a Marshall amp that he ran his bass through. He like filtered out the high end, I think, somehow, or he ran the upper strings, because those Ricks had that Rico sound. I used to have a 4001 actually back in the day, and yeah, you could run half your bass through a guitar amp and the other half through the bass amp if you wanted to. It's
Really,
similar to a
Rick
stick
set up
almost.
that way?
What's that?
Oh no, I misunderstood. Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, it's so it's got that sound to it. I mean, I'm real happy with it. It's like an actual amp modeler that works. I
Now,
mean,
did
I've
you
tried
tell-
the bolt stuff in the past, some of the Boss stuff, and even the former Line 6. I had a Pod X3 Live. That thing was a piece of junk. I mean,
That's what I was
it was
going to
nice
ask you.
sounding, but it would
Did you
change.
have to get rid of some of that stuff to get the Helix?
What's that?
Did you have to get rid of some of that stuff to get the Helix?
Yeah, I did. I had a lot of other little pedals. I've been trading pedals over the years for different things, and I had stuff that accumulated, and I got rid of that, and that's what made room for the Helix. Got that, and some of the other odd pedals that I couldn't get rid of. That if it would have been a serious burn for me if I'd have just sold them. So the guy at the Motor City Guitar said, here, for like 20, whether it's 20, 30 bucks, you take those pedals and I could get this Ditto X4. So
Yeah.
it's a really awesome looper. I did have the X2, and that's what I did. I traded the X2 with a few other ones, and then I got this X4. And
Are you running it just bass and melody side, or are you running it stereo on one side?
yeah, okay, there is you can run depending on which way you want to put it. If I want to put it before and front, but I think, what, I have to play with that, because I think this one is different than the X2. I think the X2, if you run your melody through one side and the bass through the other, it's a dedicated channel. But I think you can actually, with the 4, I think you can sum to mono.
I
You
see.
couldn't sum to mono with the X2. So that's something to keep in mind. If anybody's looking at getting one of these and you want to sum to mono or, have a little more flexibility with it, go with the X4. There's a lot more cool features on here. There's like a freeze and hold thing, and the decay function's really cool. So I haven't played with it too much. I've been dedicating. That's the thing with me, is dedicating time for what on this. So, I want, now that the guitar thing is kind of dying down with Oz, I'm going back into the sticks. Now I'm actually playing my NS. I just got that NS. I haven't really played it much. Now I'm pulling that out and routing through the Helix, and I'll probably start playing with the Ditto here in a little bit. So that's my next plans. But
right on. Well, let me ask Boaz, because I know Boaz, you have to have stuff shipped out. Things might be a little more expensive. Like, how do you deal with gear burn? How, at what point do you get to a point where you're like, I got to sell something, I got to get something else?
Well, to start off, I'm single.
No kids, right?
No kids.
Oh, man. Check and check, right?
Yeah. Not that I would know of. But I'm just setting a goal. I'm just, and as soon as I can afford it, something like the synth, I just go and buy it in few payments, and I have some stuff for sale, and so although it's a small market here in Israel, but from time to time I'm managing to sell something and buy something else.
Were you thinking of getting a synth? Was that like a synthesizer, like a keyboard synthesizer? Is that
I was meaning about the synth, the SY300.
Oh, okay.
So whenever I'm setting a goal, as soon as I can afford it, I just do it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Sometimes
if I'm selling something, it gets faster.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I had at Avanade, there was a program like that where I was able to kind of get a little money for technology, and I mean, otherwise I would never have been able to afford an SY300, and just because they're like $750 or something. It was just like, gosh, that's so much. But I had a whole bunch of gear, like when I was with the Incline and I was touring and doing all this kind of stuff. I had
it's 1,000.
I had all the stuff that needed to be sold, right? Like, so I was kind of see, like, I look at your pedal board and I'm like, man, you've got like big decisions there, like what, how, all those pedals are kind of thinking it's like Survivor, like they're going to get voted off the island or something, like he's still like buying new pedals. Somebody's got to go,
Well, some pedals, they are 30 years old.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I'm looking forward to hearing it, hearing you, what you're doing with all the pedals for sure.
Mainly noise.
Mainly noise?
Yeah.
Same here.
Yeah.
Same here. How about you, Rob? You have to deal with keyboards as well. So let me talk to you, Rob G. Like what, because I know that your most recent acquisition was the Big Sky.
Yeah, that's right. And I love it. And the reason I wanted it was because it's MIDI capable.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like having to bend over to turn knobs when I'm playing. Plus, I like to get my hands on the stick.
Sure.
So with the Keith McMillan, I can do all the stuff with my feet. But the next pedal I've got is probably going to be a timeline or something that's MIDI.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if the Pigtronics is MIDI where you can change all the CC numbers.
Mm-hmm.
If I can program those in, whatever MIDI pedal I have, if I can get all MIDI pedals, that would be awesome.
Well, the Pigtron, the choices there, the Strymon are always the first choices. You see people pairing up or tripling up the Big Sky, the Mobius, and the Timeline. And certainly that pedal that I have, that Disaster Areas pedal, cater to Strymon.
Yeah.
And you can control the looper within the Timeline very easily using general MIDI. The Strymons have MIDI in and MIDI through, which is also very valuable, which is something you won't see on the Pigtronics Infinity Looper.
Right.
But you do have MIDI in and through on the Eventide, a lot of the Eventide pedals, like the Space.
Yeah.
You probably know this all. You're like the keyboardist amongst us. I mean, right? Like,
But there are more expensive pedals, but I think you get a lot of pedal in it, so it's really cheaper if you only need the 3 pedals as opposed to getting a whole bunch of other ones. So
yeah, I would agree. I would agree on that.
but they're expensive to start with, and especially like I know in Canada, it's 30% extra. Like the Strymon pedals, just so you know, they're $650 for Big Sky in Canada. And that, so, you know, I think they're $450 or something in the States.
They're about $5. I mean, it fluctuates like $50 on either side, you know.
Yeah. So it's usually, I always get my kids to give me money for Christmas. I ask everybody to give me gift certificates for the music store here. So usually I probably plan on getting one at Christmas. I'll have a timeline in my arsenal.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, a question for Bob. Where are you at in Canada? I remember you're close to me.
My mom lives in Windsor. That's where I grew up. I live in Guelph, which is an hour.
Okay, I know who you are now. Okay,
yeah.
You're that guy, Jazz V. Brown, I think it is.
Jazz Beethoven.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'd say that's surprised. Do you ever come over here across the border to shop?
Once I don't, because I can't afford it. But maybe I can, you know. But I gotta get my passport renewed, so
okay.
Then I'll come visit. I really want to go visit Oz's. I think it'd be cool to do that sometime.
Yeah, but like I said, there's some stores too. You know, you probably buy something over the counter here.
If they would take money at par, they used to. that'd be a deal. But no.
Cool.
Who do we miss? Rodrigo. Is Rodrigo, you still with us? You're on mute. I'm going to turn you off mute. Hang on. Oh. You're on mute.
You guys listening?
Yeah, we can hear you. Hey, Rodrigo, did you have to sell something to get your stick?
No, I did not. But I had to save for a long time to save some money.
Can I tell kind of a funny story?
Don't like selling things. What?
I want to tell a funny story. It's about us. But I think you asked me. You were like, "Do you think I should do this, or what do you think about this?" And I was like, "What do you think Gene's gonna say about anyone wanting to buy a stick, right? Like, sell everything, get a stick." And Rodrigo was like, "I think I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna get a stick. I'm gonna get it." And then like 2 years later, he's playing Bach. You know, like effortlessly, making videos and stuff like that. I loved it. So,
you know, there were 2 people that were really important. You were one of them, Gene, because you said, "Go for it, go for it," and
but you knew I was going to say that. You knew Rodrigo Serrao.
And the other one was Boaz, because I sent him an email. I was playing in Israel. And I said, "Listen, I don't know you from anywhere. You don't know me, but can I touch your stick because I'm thinking of buying one? And I have a free day. Can I go and meet you somewhere?" And he said, "No, just tell me your hotel and I go and meet you." So he came by, and we just talked for a while. I got to try the stick, and it felt good, felt comfortable. So one of the main reasons I got one so fast and that I used some of the money I had on the side was because Boaz let me try his, and the feeling was amazing. So if it weren't for Boaz, I would probably be still thinking about it, you know.
I'm to blame.
I never knew that story. That is so fantastic. So he let you try the instrument?
It's more than fantastic, because I don't think he lives near the hotel I was at, and he just said, "No, just you stay at the hotel and I'll go and meet you."
Yeah, it was Saturday, and getting transportation on Saturday is hell.
Yeah, and he went out of his way just to meet me, you know, and bring his stick and his little amplifiers, and just to let me try it and see how it felt. It was amazing. I mean, it's not something most people would usually do for someone they don't know. And he was like, "I'll do it from the start," you know. Boaz is an amazing guy, and well, you are the first guy that told me go for it, and Boaz was the final push, you know.
Well, Rodrigo is quite modest. He was here in Israel. He played one of the most famous guys in Israel and the world. I don't know if you know him worldwide. He's called Idan Reichel. He's playing world music. It's famous, well, in Israel obviously, and quite famous worldwide. And Rodrigo is here playing with him.
Dude, Rodrigo, he's like a working musician, man. He's, you know,
He's
it's
living the dream.
yeah, it's cool. And Rodrigo, tell us about the quartet that you played with. This guy that's playing the mandolin.
Oh, it's not a mandolin. It's a Portuguese guitar.
Thank you. Like Pig American, like I called it the wrong thing. Like I'm so glad that you told me actually what it is. Sorry.
Actually, it comes from the English guitar. You know, when the French invaded Portugal and then the British came to help us kick out the French, and they left one of the instruments they brought. We're talking about 17th century. And the instrument was adapted and changed throughout the centuries, and it eventually got very popular and used in fado music, which is one of our traditional songs. So it's very closely related with that.
I see.
And it has a very specific sound. Kind of looks and sounds like a mandolin, but it has more low end, you know, and it's more richer sound.
Well, the stuff that I heard, which was kind of when I was first introduced to you as like, you know, kind of as a professional musician, you were like, hey, this is what I'm doing. It was, I mean, unbelievable. You know, I was like, you know, it's just kind of fun to see. You know, you see guys like out there, like Michael Bernier. You know, he goes out and he plays and he performs, and you know, I'm more of kind of a hobbyist. You know, so it's exciting to see the stick in the hands of someone that's playing music, like pretty much every few hours. You know, and that's, you know, if you're like that type of musical person, it's kind of fun to see how the stick will work its way into your life. So everyone's like super excited to see what you're going to do next. So, you know, it's like the bass is like your day gig, right?
Well, these days I'm gigging more with the stick than with the bass, actually.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, and those videos you saw of me playing with that group, that was a fado group, an instrumental fado group I had. All of that ended the moment the stick came into play, you know, because there wasn't enough time to do everything. Yeah. And you know that video that Dan just posted, that he showed us in Mallorca, where Emmett's saying that one of the hardest things is that you have to learn everything from scratch. You know, just have to relearn everything you ever did. Just to do it on the stick, you have to let it go, let everything go, and start again. And most of those gigs and those ideas and those instrumental songs I had, and the things I was doing at the time, I just had to quit doing them because there wasn't enough time to study this instrument and develop this instrument and continue to do all that. So it was a tough decision, but anyway, I made it, and I think it paid off rather well, because these days, like tonight, it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm going home, and it's I had this most amazing gig with the stick with an invited singer, and it was incredible, you know, and it's fulfilling, and I feel like I'm whole again, you know when you have this feeling that everything you wanted you can do now. So the stick gives me that, and those other projects, the music was there, but not the right instrument to play it with. The stick now offers me all that. That's the possibility to do the kind of music I want to, the way I want it to, and make a living out of it. Because I mean, it's everything's nice, but you have to make some money out of music.
That's right.
Otherwise, if you won't have the time to just practice everything you have to do, and then go off to work with something else. I mean, the 8 hours a day or 10 hours a day or 12 hours a day most people have of work, I have with the stick on my lap. That's just the thing. I spend all my days, and ever since I get up in the morning and until I go out at night to play, I spend it with a stick and studying and learning stuff and relearning stuff, and so it takes a long time, and it's kind of hard actually, but it's fun at the end of the day when you have a gig and everything goes as it was supposed to do. It's cool.
I never saw someone making such a progress in little time. He owns the stick about what is it? A year and a half, something like that.
I think it's 1 year and 3 months now, but
Yeah. So
it's
from
not a
nothing, you
secret.
became a professional.
Sorry?
You became from nothing, from holding the stick, from afraid and hold the stick, to a professional music player.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm professional because I make money out of it, but it's not even close to what I want to do with the stick, you know, because it's not it's what I do is what I can do in such little time, which is I can play some songs and I can make some music with it, but not all the things I want to, and all the things that I feel it can be done, or that I can do with it. But
Yeah.
that's the only reason I would say professional, because I make some money out of it. But that's just about it. I'm light years still behind what I want to do with it. Not to mention most of other people that play, and you know, I mean, it's not comparable. You cannot do in 1 year what people do in 20 years.
Yeah.
Plus, I mean,
Getting there is going to be half the fun there, Rodrigo. Like,
I know it will. You know, but the thing is, if you have a purpose and you have somewhere you want to go, and you have the tool to get there, well, all the conditions are just there for you to have some fun, you know, to be happy. And that's what the stick brings personally to me. It's this opportunity to do what I want to do and be happy doing it, and getting there, of course.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Well, let me. I'm glad you shared that with us. I didn't know that. Maybe it was mentioned to me before that you and Boaz hung out and talked about the instrument, but I enjoyed hearing that story again because I know that Boaz wants a chopping stick in every living room in Israel. You'd be the guy to do it, Boaz. I'm sure. You know, like that's.
Yeah, it's a small world. I was quite amazed that someone here came from all the way from Portugal to Israel and interested in playing the stick.
Yeah,
That was it.
he was probably interested as you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Then it was inevitable. It was inevitable. Yeah. And then you guys got to hang out at stick camp, right?
Exactly.
We were roommates at the stick camp.
That's so great. That's so great. What a cool story.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you. So I want to. At some point, we do have to circle back to Rob. Rob, I hope you don't mind me commandeering the conch here and making sure that everyone got a chance to talk here. But I did want to ask Victor as well, kind of like that question. You know, like, have you ever, you know, was there a moment with the instrument where you're like, I can't do this, or something else has to go? Like, you had to make that kind of hard decision before with the stick and money.
Well, you know, every 4-digit purchase is, well, shoot, a 3-digit purchase is, you know, is worthy of a lot of thought. But I was in a situation where when I decided I wanted to buy a stick, you know, I thought it through, and when I was able to go ahead and just buy it outright at the time, and whatnot. On the amp side, you know, I've been, you know, a lot more. I guess that's been a little bit more of a challenge, but. But getting a stick was, yeah, I was blessed in a situation where I could buy it and then, you know, just cut back in a few other places for a little while, and I was there. But and on the amp side, I've just, you know, I'm of the opinion that you know, an expensive amp can sound better, but you don't need an expensive amp to make a stick sound good. And so for my first 3 years, I was playing out of a drum amp, and then I spent $75 on Craigslist on a Behringer keyboard amp, and that got me going for a year and whatnot, and even through a few small gigs.
Yeah.
And then, you know, since then, you know, I agonized over what I wanted to do to make. I needed more power, and so. You know, I took a few months and, you know, researched, went to Guitar Center, plugged into a few things, and then dropped about $1,000 on an amp, and, you know, I just finished paying that off. I didn't have to finance that through anyone except my wife, but.
What was the amp that you got, or what was the upgrade?
I got a Mark bass.
Those are nice.
Yeah, so. and I like it. It's taken me through a couple of gigs. There was one we played. We got roped into playing a wedding reception that was outdoors, and we didn't have time to set up the full PA. And my Mark bass took me through it. People didn't have any problems hearing the bass or what I was doing through the melody side. So I was happy with it, and it's light. It's that's right. It's a combo amp that I can carry my whole rig in one trip if I want to without totally killing my back. So that was
or 210.
What's that?
Is it a what is the amp or the combo?
It's called a CMD 102 is what it is, and it's a 210. It's got a tweeter, and it's the way it is, it's 300 watts, and then if you plug it into another, if you plug it into an auxiliary like a 15 or something, then it's 500. But I've never done that. So, but anyway, so that's and as far as the rest of my gear goes, though, I'm a minimalist. I've got a bass EQ, and for a while I had a nice MXR compressor, but right now I'm just using a couple of Zoom multi-effects pedals into a mixer that I got for 75 or 80 bucks, something like that, and then that just goes into whatever I need, whether it's the house or my amp or I still have my keyboard amp and whatnot. Gear, I try and keep it to a minimum. I mean, that's just the way I am. I don't want to have to be one of those people that needs a half hour to set up. If I have to play somewhere, I like being able to just plug my stick into my pedal board into the outlet, and one output into wherever or multiple. But I'm not.
It's appreciated by everyone. Like the sound guy's like, okay, good. And the drummer's like, okay, good. And everyone's like, okay, good. It's not this. It's more about music, and it's less about technicality and.
Yeah, and I have found that whenever I get I got the itch. There's so many things I'd like to buy that I just but every time I research something, I realize, man, I just blew 3 hours that I could have been practicing. So that's kind of I don't know. I've got
the stickist. It's like I'll be reading the stickist and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I like?
Exactly. Yeah. No. But stickist has good value at it. Yeah, I've learned a lot on stickist. So anyway, there we go. That's it. I'm really not. I love hearing people talk about gear, but I just don't have much to contribute. Because
definitely. Like when Rob's talking about gear, sometimes I'm kind of like, that sounds rad, And I think I got a little bit that way when I was out in Interlochen. I think, Steve, you had a Mark bass. Did you have a Mark bass amp as well?
Yeah, that's one of the things I sold. Now, one of the things, Mark bass has so many different amps, and the one thing I had a problem with was those filters, a VPP and something else. Part of my equation, though, is I've got a graphite Grand. And what Greg Howard explained to me is that graphite instruments carry the high frequencies longer. So I'm hearing some strange things I probably wouldn't hear if I had a wooden stick. The NS is so flexible, it can run into anything. I mean, when I performed at Interlochen, I ran the Mark bass and one K12 through the Zoom pedal. The Zoom pedal was at the middle, and that was going out to those, and that's what you were hearing.
Hey, Rob's checking out here. Rob G. Thanks, man. Have a good night. Happy Free Hands Friday.
Same to you. See you guys.
All right, later. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, those filters on the Mark bass that you talk about, I know exactly what you're talking about there. They sound really good in some settings, but in other settings, usually I've just got it all the way down. I've got the filters down to 0.
They have some new amps out now that don't have all that stuff. It's got the normal tone circuit, like I think a bass, low mid, high mid, and a treble. That looks interesting. Now there's a guy that shows up at Oz's. He's a very good stick player, John McBride, is his last name. Comes down into Oz's once a month with us, and he's got 2 Eden cabinets that are powered by 2 of these small Mark bass heads. Now he bought 2 of them to play in stereo. They're just like little half rack size ones, and through those Eden cabinets he has, those are the ones that go down to like 35 hertz. They're the smaller cube, I think with neodymium speakers in them. And he has a very awesome sound. He's one of my favorite, all the guys in our area that play, I like his sound the best. He just knows how to, uses some line 6 effects, but overall his sound is just so fantastic. And now he just switched to these little mark bass heads going through it, and it still sounds great. And it's a lot lighter. I mean, these little mark bass heads, you put them in a little satchel of some sort he's got there, and it just goes under his arm. That's it.
Wow.
Right.
It's very portable.
The joys of Class D power.
Yeah.
So cool. Thanks for sharing that, Steve. I do recall that, seeing that mark bass, and it was the first time actually I got to play through one. So that's when I do, that kind of stuck out in my mind. We've been going for almost 2 hours, so I kind of want to circle back to Rob here, and well, actually, I want to thank everyone. We didn't get to really. I'm glad, Rodrigo, that you got to join back again. I know that Dan and Rob G had to check out, but it is getting kind of late. We should try to wrap up. But I did want to just thank Rob for just explaining this journey that you've been going through, and it's so great to see you back on the forum, man. Like, it's just like oh, good. You know, we had this craziness with like Greg and KRX, and like everything worked out, right? Like everything's cool now. Like they're not. Like Kevin's cool with everything.
As far as I know, I mean, I don't know Greg's side of it, but
okay. Well,
yeah, it's not something I'm in. You know what I'm saying?
It makes me happy. You know?
Hey, you know,
Yeah,
well, Rob, son, I wanted to say something to Rob. You know, a lot of the stuff that you posted, you know, I've experimented with different gear and that, but some of the things you talked about with amps, you brought me the attention of like with the Zoom pedal I had used. There was the little 2-band parametric.
Can you talk closer to the mic?
Can you hear me?
Get a little more level from you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's good.
I'm turning it up. I have the Zoom thing going here. That's what I've been cranking the volume up on. But a lot of the stuff I do read in there, and there's a lot of things you can pull out of Rob's posts that have value, maybe in ways he didn't intend. And it's like, oh, here's a piece of gear that has what he's talking about, and I actually made this thing work for that, you know, and that was cool. There's a lot of stuff maybe I don't get a Green Boy cabinet or something, but he's solved the mystery why some cabinets didn't work for me, what went wrong. I'm looking back and like, oh, okay, you know, it's like, too bad we didn't have these discussions years before I started playing with this shit, you know, and I would have had something I wouldn't have, you know, done that. I would have gone a different route and spend less time messing with gear and playing more. Because I'll tell you one thing, when Bob Culbertson comes up here, you want to hide your gear because he's a minimalist. He plays through a little mixer into a PA, and that's it. Yeah. And he has that, you know what Bob does. I mean, it's like you just want to flush all your expensive gear down the toilet once he plays, you know. So it's like I don't want to be showing off my gear in front of him because I can't play anywhere near he can, you know. So
to just sit in a corner, you know, just like I can't even. I don't even want to go home. It's just lay here.
In mountain bike terms, we call them Freds. You know, people that buy expensive stuff and can't do what the pro can do.
Oh, yeah.
There's a name for it, and I don't want to be that Fred in front of Bob.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Yeah. So at some point, like, it is fun to see that because there's been times like Rob, I'm not going to lie, like it gets so technical that I can't keep up. But there are elements, especially when we were talking about like compression and preamps and stuff like that. It really started to click with me, you know, like why like the amp sims weren't working with the Line 6 stuff, and why the EVX power amp that I had wasn't working for me. And so definitely it is. I'm looking forward to having you back on those deep dive discussions, and I'm hopeful that you know that you're able to afford the guitar that you're after, or so whatever your next purchase may be.
Yeah, well, I mean, as long as the buyer actually pays for what I just sold, you know, it's sold pending payment. As long as he pays, I'm good. But I would like to say thanks to Steve. It's good to know that actually helped somebody. When I wrote it, it started off just sort of asking questions, right, from perspectives from people who play stick and have played stick. And then it sort of morphed into, you know what, when I have ideas, I'm going to write them down, because at that point in my fatigue, if you look back, I think that started in 2012, maybe 2013. At that, I think it was early 2013. At that point in my fatigue, I would have memory lapses, and it wasn't like any kind of had no legal bearing. You know what I mean? It wasn't like movie of the week memory lapses, but it was good to write stuff down so that I could go, oh yeah, that's what the third thing was on that list, that sort of thing. And what I decided to do is every time I would make a list, and it didn't exactly start this way, but it quickly developed this way. Every time I made a list, I explained what was in it and what job it had, how it would work, what the basic signal route was in terms of what was talking to what other piece of equipment. And then every time I would have a new idea, I would start by talking about why I've changed it, what I realized. And that was for my own memory, so that if I ever forgot, I could go back to a certain date or even the very beginning of the thread and just read and go, oh yeah, that was a bad idea. And so, Steve, it actually was intentional that somebody could pull something out of that wasn't what I was talking about for myself. That's one of the reasons I was trying to be as explicit as possible, is I don't want anybody to have to reinvent the wheel. I was afraid that I had nothing really to add to Stickist, because I really wasn't a musician, let alone a Stickist. And what I realized is, you know what? I am permanently unemployed. I am intelligent, and most of the time there's nothing I can do, because I can't do what I choose to do with the fatigue. And so the more I'm learning, the more I'm making lists, like literally making lists kind of help me recover from neurological fatigue. The more I'm doing that, the more I'm helping myself remain an intelligent, inquisitive person. And so I'm sort of uniquely suited to go on these deep dives and like download all 3 revisions of the manual that are, you have to go to archive.org for the part where it had that section in it.
That's the man for the job, man.
Yeah, it's like, who else is going to do this? They're busy making music. I'm not, So
I think there's a consulting business in there somewhere. Like, in the same way that people have like software consultants and, they have like financial consultants, you could be a consultant and you could say, hey, look, I charge like 5% of your total purchase. I'll make sure that you get the best deal. Like
finder's fee, yeah. But and in the heydays of the legendary Los Angeles music scene, Dave Friedman with Huge Racks, he's still got Huge Racks Inc. These guys who would work out your rig for you, they didn't haul it. They just figured it out for you. When you bought it for an extra fee, they'd hook it all up and like make you a list of this is what you plug in where, and I'm not responsible if you screw it up.
Oh,
but
money, man, like that.
Yeah, but I would like to apologize to Victor and everyone else. It sort of makes sense in a sort of symmetry that you can make me talk about gear ad infinitum, drop of a hat, but we make a show about Rob talking about gear, and there's all this other stuff to talk about. So I want to apologize.
This is perfect, and
yeah. But if anybody, if we can't get a Freehands Friday session again about it, because after all, what a privilege to have it once, sorry I wasted it. But if anybody wants to chat gear, I'm always available. I mean, goodness knows, I'm always available.
Well, then that definitely, let's come back, and maybe what we'll do is what might be fun to talk about, Rob, is some of these Zoom pedals. Because I know something that I'm seeing recurring, I know that Boaz had used one of the Zoom pedals, Victor used one of the Zoom pedals. Right, and I think, Steve, you got one of the Zoom pedals.
I don't have it anymore, but it's actually for sale at Oz. But guess who got me into the Zoom pedal? Was Andy Silvanos.
Ah.
A lot of my gear choices actually were influenced by Andy. I met Andy in Australia back in 2010, and ever since then, I've kept in contact with Andy, Conrad, Justin, But I've actually sold. Actually, Andy bought a looper from me one time too. So, because it was actually cheaper to buy my used one than to pay. Again, with the gear thing, Australia is like big bucks over there for some of these things. You're talking $600 to $800 for stuff we pay $300 for. So, Andy's big on the
Bob Culbertson.
What's that?
Andy Silvanos is like the Australian Bob Culbertson.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very good sound. It's really cool seeing him play live.
Oh wow, yeah, he's very inspiring. I love the way he approaches the instrument. I mean, he plays it.
Overall, he's just a very nice guy. I talked to him on Facebook about all kinds of things outside even stick and that. So, I mean, just a really great guy and down to earth. And you know, the Zoom thing comes up, and someday I might, if I want another little pedal. That's the main reason I got rid of the G3. Doesn't have the pedal that came out later, but I wouldn't mind if I had to go get another small pedal. I would probably get one of the new Zoom ones that have the dual input, you know, and you can program them. Everything's programmable nowadays, which is awesome. It's not like the old Boss stomp pedals that were,
Right.
you know, you bought that and that's all it is, you know, and nowadays you get upgrades and you can do things with them.
Yeah, the H9, things like the H9 and those new Hauser, new neighbor ones.
Yeah, new neighbor.
And tone print, like it changed the game. And I thought about, so I don't run any effects on my bass side, and so I thought about maybe like, well, would it be cool to have a Zoom? Anyways, maybe we could talk about those like multi-effects pedals, you know, like, because it used to be like, remember Ibanez would have the big ones with like, here's the chorus and here's the echo.
Yeah, I remember those.
Overdrive, you know, and then Boss had one, and you know, these big clunky things, and now I've got the HD, the Line 6 pedals. I think it'd be fun to kind of talk about some of those smaller pedals, and I'll bet you we could get Dean Kobayashi on to talk about those as well.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I do want to make two notes real quick before I forget. Number one, the Zooms where they're particularly good, I mean, just period, never mind for the price, is they have a lot of EQ. And there's a lot of more expensive stuff that doesn't give you parametric EQ. It doesn't give you like a crossover kind of thing. And that's where I found a lot of the cheaper modeling stuff when I was looking into it as sort of an EQ only thing. Like I don't care about the amp sim, I don't care about the speaker sim. What I found was that a lot of the higher end, more versatile modeling things actually had less EQ than Zoom pedals did. And for EQ purposes, the Zoom, I think it's the MS50 and the MS50G and MS60B, if I recall that correctly, loads of EQ.
Oh man, you got to save some for the show. We'll do this next week. How's that? Right? We'll do this next week, but you got to save some for next week.
So the last thing I'll say is talking about sacrifices and stuff. This mixer's going. I paid it off Thursday. As soon as I can get a buyer, this thing's going.
Really?
Yeah, I've got to pure money. I've got to pocket whatever I can and get an audio interface that works in Linux, because it's clear I don't have the money to keep Windows alive. When Windows 7, you know, when its numbers up, I have to already be transitioned to Linux. So this thing theoretically works with Linux, but not really. It's a long story. And so it's just like
Ubuntu? Would you use Ubuntu, or what would you use?
I use Ubuntu Studio, yeah.
Okay.
And I use the KX Studio repositories and stuff on top, but as a base I use Ubuntu Studio because it gives me the low latency stuff already figured out. I've been using Linux like 14 years, and I know enough to know that if somebody's going to do it for me, thank you, right? So I use that as a base. But
Ubuntu is a solid distro just because it has good support for like all these new technologies.
Yeah, it's a Debian base, and Debian's been around forever. I think Debbie or Ian Murdoch started it in '95, I think.
Yeah.
And the Linux kernel original release was '91, so I mean, '95 you were still cutting edge if you had a graphical interface in Linux. But yeah, Debbie and Ian, but Ian's the guy who did it. Anyway, that's where Debian comes from, by the way, is Debbie and Ian.
Yeah, and as I recall, that Ubuntu was making such a big noise, they were kind of pushing around the Debian guys. The Debian guys didn't like that.
Yeah, it was really funny. Mark Shuttleworth, you know, Debian. There's been so many things built on Debian. Like this battle was fought a long time ago. This is the way Debian is. You know,
right.
They got Squeeze, they got Wheezy. They've always had Squeeze and Wheezy. Like if you're gonna get into Debian, then understand what it is. You know, there's no orthodoxy here.
Right.
But
respect the kernel.
But anyway, yeah, I'm gonna get an audio interface because again, all that whatever I may do in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Well, none of that's happening until I'm in like San Diego or some, you know, equivalent, right? So pocket what I can.
Let me ask you this: maybe we should do something on audio interfaces, because you're going to be doing that research anyways. So why don't we pick a date, either this Friday or next Friday, or 2 weeks out, and let's talk about interfaces. Would people have interest in that, audio interfaces?
Maybe we could start a thread on. Sorry.
I probably would, because I actually one of my upgrades is a Zoom tech. I'm the Thunderbolt. Does it
Okay.
sound pretty good on your end?
Yeah,
I had to
yeah.
put the regular mic because I guess I don't have a mic in my computer. I had to grab my old 30-year-old microphone and plug
Okay.
it into the Zoom, and it's a Thunderbolt.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
it sounds okay. I mean, we could do something. I think it'd be interesting to do the Zoom pedals or the audio interfaces, and we can take it offline. But
Yeah, if we make a freehand in the Freehands Friday section on Stickets, we make a thread and like have some topics and then figure out who's interested in what and in what sequence. That way we could actually build in a good sequence. You know?
that's great. Maybe what we'll do is, okay, so then like who's on here? Like so the 6 of us, the 7 of us, let's all think of one topic that we want to kind of champion, and then what we'll do is like we'll put it out there and we can start. We'll put together like a timeline for that. Yeah, because then people can kind of schedule it. So let's. And I think another thing that I wanted to say is let's wait 2 weeks if that's okay. And then what we'll do is it's a little more sustainable. And then we can say we're going to do it. We're going to set the day. And if everyone's okay, I know the hours are kind of crazy. Maybe we can talk more about the hours depending on the subject, so that Rodrigo doesn't have to be up at 4 in the morning. Boaz doesn't have to be up at like 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning there.
It's sunrise.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, Rob. Let me start with you. Thank you so much for making time for us, and we're so glad that you're doing all right, and that we get to see you and talk to you, and for sharing your knowledge with us. Everyone on the Stickers is very grateful to you.
I'm grateful y'all care that I'm back. You know what I'm saying? Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. So 2 weeks from today, we'll do it again. So Victor, Tomas, Steve, Rodrigo, Boaz, and then the people who were previously on the call, Rob G, Dan. Did I forget anyone? Anyone at all? No. It was good. It was I think our longest freehands ever. So let's hit the boards let's hit the boards this weekend, and we'll start talking about some topics, and like anything you want. Like we can talk, just like not about women or beer, because we've got that covered in Never Threads. So I would say, audio interfaces is one that I'm definitely interested in, and the Zoom pedals are pretty cool. So if you think of other things, let's talk about them.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, listen. Thanks everyone for making time. It was a great session, and it's so great to see everyone. And sorry I missed it last week. I'm looking forward to doing it again in 2 weeks. And over the next 2 days, we'll figure out what we want to talk about next.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot, Gene.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Have a great night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Benoit,